Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me here on my channel today for part 2 of how to paint a Japanese landscape. Let's get painting. So we'll finish putting the details in the cherry blossom trees. One more layer. We're going to take the cadmium red and a little bit of titanium white, put them together next to each other on the palette, and just kind of go back and forth on the dirty brush, picking up a little of the darker and a little of the lighter, and then randomly place these little impressions of cherry blossoms wherever you want on these branches. But I like to bounce around from branch to branch so that it never looks too uniform. And we have one more cherry blossom branch coming off to the side. Now these trees are way in the foreground. They're the only thing that's in the foreground of this painting. Everything else is smaller because it's further back. And now, just using a variation of the gray colors, light and dark, we're just going to put a little texture into this island in the front where the little house is. And I do end up putting a lot of details into the house and the stone wall, but later I put a tree and a panda bear right in front of them. So if you're going to put the tree and the panda bear also in the painting, which does add some difficulty to the painting, but it's a lot of fun, you may just want the landscape without those two items. But if you are going to put those two items in, then don't spend a lot of time on the detail of the stone wall and the windows in the bottom of the house and all that, because a lot of it gets covered up with the tree and the panda bear. So we're just giving the impression of stone on the wall by taking our brush very gently, kind of dragging in different directions, up and down, stippling some white in there, stippling some light gray and dark gray, and then just adding a little texture for the look of stone. And now I'm just coloring in the little house with a dark gray, and then we'll pull some white for reflections, and some windows will be put in there. I love these little Japanese or Chinese Asian homes. They're so cute with the little pagoda style, where the sides of the different tiers flip up like this. And later we'll put some red tassels on. So there's very little color in this painting, but it's so much fun to do with this limited palette. So using a much lighter gray, we're putting in the sections where there'll be some windows. Now, even after I put the tree in and the panda bear, the top two layers of windows will show. It's the bottom windows and door that get covered up with the tree. Even if you decide to put the tree and the panda bear in at the end, you can still go ahead and follow along and put in all the details. It could be just some good practice for you. I think it's a good idea. And also, if bits and parts of the building show up in between the branches, if you have the details in there, that's a very good effect. But my tree that I put in covers almost completely the bottom section of that house. So if you're gonna do that as well, just don't fuss too much on the details. Does that make sense? Of course, you can do whatever you want. This is your little world. as Bob Ross says. And as you're painting along with me, the one wonderful thing about YouTube is you can pause your YouTube and stop, catch up with me on a step if it's taking you a little bit longer to do it, and then turn it back on and voila, and rewind and all those good things. So that's what I love about the YouTube. And if you choose to do this at a paint party or something like that, that's fantastic, because someone may have missed a step and ask you to rewind and then go back, and you can always do that. And they could actually have it pulled up on their own phone or on their own iPad device, have it next to their station, and they could be playing it as the party is going along. And if they felt the need to backtrack, they could do that, catch up with detail, and then catch up with the rest of the party. I think it works out really great. Now we'll be putting the panes in for the window, and we're just going straight up and down all the way around. And I'm just using Mars Black for this. And the brush I'm using is a 1/8 inch angle brush. So on these bottom windows, I've just put in the Mars Black into this section of the window, like this is the foundation of the house and the lights are out and down there in the bottom. But as I mentioned before, my tree covers over this completely, so I'm not going to put a whole lot of detail into it, but I'm putting some panes in the window here for all of you that want to go ahead and do that and are going to stop before putting the tree and the panda bear. As you're painting in the window, use a little bit of light and a little bit of dark and leave a variation of color so it looks like there's something going on in the house. And then I'm just taking a little bit of titanium white to really gray out the black and just adding that for some definition and some reflections on the top of the roofs. So I'm just working on that sweeping curvature on the side of the roofs. These are known as flying eaves. It's part of the architecture in Japan. And now we're going to put in the shadow for the lady on the bridge and her red umbrella. I just use a tapping motion so that it's not a solid mirror image of the item that I'm putting the reflection down in the water of. So that way it looks like it's picking up movement from the water. So here I'm just putting that reflection of the red umbrella. So what I've done here is I've taken the cerulean blue and the titanium white and watered it down and made a glaze. So in order to do this, it has to be very, very watery so that as you glaze over the top of all the reflections that you've put down there in the water, it still shows through. So it's the consistency of milk, maybe even less, of skimmed milk really. So make your glaze the consistency of a very thin skimmed milk and just glaze over all the reflections. And this is just the tiniest bit of cerulean blue and titanium white and water, and glaze over the entire area of the water. And you'll see that that ends up making this just look very calm and glassy. And here I'm just adding a little bit more to the top part of that flying eve on the top section of this little house. Filling it in, it was a little bit too pointy and thin and looked like a little funny hat. So we're just filling that in a little bit more. And all I'm using here is a very, very dark gray with mostly Mars black and a little bit of titanium white. And here I'm just putting 3 little dots, so I'm making like ornamental bulbs hanging there, and a little later I put some white on them to help them to pop out. But right now it's just the cad red, just 3 little dots from each of these curved up eaves. So with a little bit of Mars black, just kind of put a shadow all along the bottom section of these parts of the home, you know, where there's roofs hanging over the sections of windows. So now just with Mars Black, go ahead and put the tree in, and just paint the trunk of the tree, and then just put in the branches, and later on we'll put some detail onto the branches. But for now we're just using the Mars Black and pulling those branches off to the side, and we'll actually put some texture in on those branches, and later, like I said, we'll add the lighter colors to help give the bushes, the branches, some definition and life. And you paint whatever tree you want to paint there in whatever proportion you want. Maybe you don't want it to block the house like my tree ends up doing. So you just put whatever tree you want, but just keep in mind, if you want to put that little panda bear, you have to leave room for him underneath your tree, or you could put him off to the side or whatever. But I'm putting the panda bear right underneath my tree. So if you're painting along with me, just work on your tree by adding the size and dimension of each one of these branches with the Mars Black. And then you'll just want to take that same dirty brush and put it into a gray mixture, and then add a layer of that just with a stippling effect to add texture and dimension to each one of the branches. And then you'll come in with a lighter gray closer to white, so adding a lot more titanium white to the gray, and then that'll be the final section of stippling that you're going to do on top of that. Okay, I'm just topping up here at the top of the roof to add a little texture to that as well, while I have that color on my paintbrush. Now we're going to be putting in the cute little panda bear. This is not such a little panda bear. He's quite a hefty little panda bear. So I sketched in a panda there. And now I'm just filling in the colors. So I have to start putting some PDFs on there so you can download the images and sketch them out yourself using the downloads. I have to figure that all out. I'm not as tech savvy as some, but I noticed that a lot of YouTubers do that, and that is something I'm going to start offering. But if you can, just follow along with me as we put the white and the black in. And we're still doing this with, of course, a limited palette. A panda doesn't have much color to it than black and white, except there is quite a bit of yellow in the white fur, but we're still just using black and whites and grays to create our painting today. So we're going to stick with that, and it's going to be a cute little panda. So this is his one arm here coming over, and then later we'll add the impression of some claws there for his little paws. And here's his other arm, and he's going to be a cute little panda. Let's put in his ears, little rounded ears, and those long dark eyes. I suggest that you get a picture of a panda. There's a ton of them online if you Google it, and then just kind of sketch out a little panda and follow closely to where the black goes. So what I did is I put in the white first, so the light values first, and then I'm putting in all the black. It almost feels like painting by numbers, because when you have a sketch in and you start filling in the lights and the darks, then it's in little sections, and then you come back and put in all the details. And that little light section there is his big old chubby belly. So cute. And we're going to paint that in with white, and then we'll come in and put some other, just a little bit of texture and detail in there. So see, I'm pulling in some darker hairs coming up from the bottom of his belly. And then I'm just going to pull a couple up here on the top, and then those will be lightened out a bit too. But you can see from the light and the dark on the top and the bottom, you see the roundness of the belly once that's all blended in. And the bottom of his feet are, you see the bottoms of his feet, the way that he's situated here. What do they call it? The pad of the feet, or his paws. It can be challenging painting an animal in such a tiny proportion, but it's fun and it looks great after. Of course, with such a tiny little painting, you can't put the details in that you would in a larger painting, but if you get a small enough brush, just this tiniest little brush, you can get some pretty good details in there. So just follow along with me, stop and pause if you need to go back, and just take your time with it, because like I said, it can be challenging. So don't give up on it, and just keep going at it until it looks just right. As you're looking at a picture of the panda and you're drawing this in, and there are some on the copyright free like Upsplash and things like that, so you can look on those. And is it Pixabay or Pixabay, something like that? But anyway, there's some copyright-free sites that you can look at panda bear pictures, and then just follow along with them. And for the darker fur values on the white sections of fur, just make a gray, like a light gray, and use that. Whereas if you were painting a panda more realistic without just a limited palette, you would put some beige in there, some little bit of yellow in the fur. But for this, just use your grays to put the shadows in the fur around the nose and all of that. So here I'm just taking a very light gray and putting some highlights on the black fur to show the turn in the arms, and like that part of his neck that's showing before you actually get to the arm. Once I put the lighter in on top, it shows that that's partly the neck and partly the arm. On the right hand facing side is what I'm talking about. So with a little white, just tap in the indication of his claws on the top part of his paw. So once you get that black fur section around the eye on both sides, when you get that just right, then the eyeball itself is up at the top part of that dark section of fur. So looking at an inspiration shot that you have, or a reference photo, notice that the eyes are at the top part of that fur, and you'll just want to take a little dot of white and then go around it with a tiny line of black. So here I just put a stick of bamboo in his arms, and I'm sorry that I accidentally didn't film that part, but I just put a straight line with some lighter paint, and then I added a little bit of black, where it has the rims going around the bamboo, and then I'm just going to take a little white and just accent in between those little black lines, so then it will look like, using this limited palette without pulling in some green and yellows, we're just still going to stick to this palette, we can create the look of bamboo. And I'm pulling the hands, I'm going to pull the hands over part of the bamboo, so he's holding it there, and a little bit later I bring it down all the way to the ground, and here I'm just rounding up that little belly with a little lighter gray blended in that darker color I had there. So just keep playing with your panda, make sure that you put those lights and darks, the values are the most important part. And on a tiny little panda bear like that, that is majorly important to get the image of a panda. So here for the trees, and this is more of a spruce tree, it's a little shorter and fluffier, this particular one anyway. And I'm taking just a bit of gray going over the black that I had on there for the trees, and just going to add the texture to that. Then I'll come back with a little titanium white, not just straight, but a lighter color using a lot of titanium white to put the final texture on the top of the branches here. So now we're just gonna put in some details on this tree. And if you remember at the beginning, I mentioned, and I think I even mentioned in part 1, that my tree goes over a lot of the house, the bottom part of the house. But depending on how you situate your tree, you may have parts of the house showing through. So it all depends on how you want to create your little Japanese scene. This is a shorter, stockier tree. I believe this one resembled a spruce tree. So the other one was black pine, and this is a spruce, which is commonly seen in Japan and China as well. So continue on. I hope that you watched part 1 of the video and you're following along with me in making a painting and a little Japanese scene. I don't know if you've ever looked this up before, but you can Google Japanese landscapes, or Asian landscapes really, Chinese landscapes. They are just so pretty. Most of them seem to be in the grays and black with a little bit of red for the cherry blossoms like we have here. But then there are some that are colorful as well. They're just beautiful. I would love to go to Japan. The mountain range is amazing over there. Have any of you been to Japan? What a great, beautiful place. And the art is amazing. The art in all the Asian countries, I think, is just beautiful. I hope that you're enjoying this tutorial and that you're painting along. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and put on the bell for notifications of the upcoming tutorials. I am going to be painting 2 Maine Coon cats in the next video. So I look forward to seeing you there, and thank you so much for watching this. I appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. And I'd love to hear from you. If you have a comment, please leave a comment below. And let me know if you have any questions or if you would like to see something else painted. I would love to hear from you. Sorry for the hair that keeps getting in the way. I think I was very close to the canvas when I was painting this part. Sorry about that. So I call this the tweaking phase, where you take your brush and you go and you accent anything that needs to be accented, put little highlights here and there to help things stand out, like a little bit of a lighter gray up there on the top of that peak. And then I go around to the flowers and just add a little tiny bit of black into the flowers, just a little tiny dot in the centers. And then I go back in and add some more pink and cadmium red, a little bit of white. And this is something else that you just want to take your own artistic ability and do your own way. Just keep it random, keep it loose. This is sort of, those cherry blossom trees are just loosely painted there. They're not incredibly detailed. So just keep it loose and have fun adding as many cherry blossoms as you want to. And a little bit later I add a little bit of white to them and just little dots of white and a little tiny bit of detail into the branch itself, just with little splashes of white just to highlight. So I loved working with this palette. I think I'm going to look forward to doing something else with just such a limited palette in the future. This is the first painting I've ever done in this style with just the black, white, and red and that tiny bit of blue. Have you all painted any of these Japanese scenes before, or Chinese scenes, anything with this limited palette? I'd love to hear about it. So it's just kind of adding to the texture here on these little hills. So just going around and tweaking everything, just making that bridge a little smoother. So here I'm just doing all the little details, like adding white dots to the 3 ornamental bulbs that are hanging there on each of those peaks, and putting a little accent on the umbrella. So don't forget to paint the sides and the tops and bottoms of your canvas so it's completely gallery wrapped and you can hang it right away on the wall. Here's the finished painting. I hope you love it. And if you painted your own painting, I hope that it turned out great and you're really happy with it. Thank you so much for joining me for this one, and I appreciate you being here with me, and I look forward to painting with you again in the future. Take care of yourselves, stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy. Bye-bye.